It was a stormy Thursday afternoon when the wind howled like a wild beast outside the glass doors of Miller and Company department store. The rain battered the pavement, soaking the few unlucky pedestrians who hadn't made it indoors in time. Inside, warm lighting glowed against polished floors, and the scent of cologne, new leather, and floor wax lingered in the air. Most customers were in a hurry, browsing racks with mild interest, checking their watches, tapping impatiently on their phones. But in the corner of the men's section, something unusual caught the attention of Amelia. She had been refolding sweaters, her name badge slightly askew on her red uniform, when she noticed the commotion. An old man stood by the fitting rooms, holding a navy coat in his trembling hands. His silver hair was unkempt, and his trousers looked a little too loose around his waist, as if he'd lost more weight than he'd meant to. A sales associate, a young man with an oily smirk and perfect hair, was openly mocking him. "I told you, sir, that coat is not on sale. And frankly, it's out of your budget," he said, sneering. "Maybe try the thrift store next block over." A few nearby customers turned, glanced and turned back, pretending not to hear. Amelia's stomach clenched. The old man said nothing. He stood frozen, lips slightly parted, eyes blinking behind cracked glasses. Amelia didn't hesitate. She walked over, calm but purposeful, ignoring the warning glare from her supervisor at the cash register. "Excuse me," she said, inserting herself between the old man and the sneering clerk. "Can I help you, sir?" The old man looked up, startled. I just wanted to try this on. It reminded me of one my wife used to like." Amelia smiled gently. "It's a lovely choice. Right this way, sir. Let me get a proper size for you and steam it real quick so it fits just right." She turned to the clerk, voice cool. "And we don't assume what someone can or can't afford. That's not who we are." "Right." The clerk rolled his eyes but said nothing. Amelia led the old man to the fitting room, helped him with the coat, and even found a matching scarf in the clearance bin to go with it. They chatted briefly, mostly about books, jazz music, and the way modern life always seemed too fast. When he walked out wearing the coat, he looked taller, straighter. The transformation was subtle but striking. Customers looked again, but this time in admiration. At the register, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a black credit card. The clerk's eyes widened, and his tone changed instantly. "Oh, sir, I didn't realize. Please allow me." The old man didn't even look at him. He nodded at Amelia instead. "Thank you, young lady. You remind me of someone I used to know. Kindness is a rare currency these days." He left, coat on his back, scarf fluttering into the rainy dusk. The next morning, Amelia arrived to find the store buzzing like a disturbed beehive. People whispered. Managers scurried. Then someone tapped her on the shoulder. "Amelia Turner," said a tall man in a sleek gray suit. "Mr. Miller would like to see you." "Now." She blinked. "Mr. Miller, as in?" "Yes, the Mr. Miller." Heart pounding, she followed him up the glass-paneled elevator, past apartments she'd only seen on corporate training videos, into a spacious office filled with city light and the smell of old books and mahogany. At the desk sat the old man from yesterday. He wasn't wearing the navy coat now. He was wearing a tailored three-piece suit, an expression like a calm storm behind his eyes. "Amelia," he said with a warm smile. "Please, sit." She sank into the chair, unsure whether to speak. Mr. Miller leaned forward. "Do you know who I am?" She nodded slowly. "You're the CEO, the founder. You own all of this." He smiled. "Technically, yes. But yesterday I was just a man in need of help. And you didn't know who I was. You had no reason to defend me. But you did." She said nothing, unsure if she was being praised or punished. "That coat," he said softly, "reminded me of the one my late wife bought me the day I opened my first store. I went into the crowd yesterday because I wanted to see if any of that old spirit still existed, if kindness still lived in these walls." Amelia swallowed hard. "You were the only one who passed the test." He reached into his drawer, pulled out a sleek envelope and slid it toward her. Inside was a formal letter, with a new job title, Customer Experience Director. Full benefits, triple her current pay, office view, travel opportunities, and a personal note. Never stop being who you are. But just as her eyes welled with disbelief, Mr. Miller added, "There's one more thing I'd like to ask of you." Amelia blinked. "Anything." He smiled again, softer this time. "Help me rebuild this company's soul." And so began a journey that would take Amelia far beyond folding sweaters. A journey that would bring her face to face with jealous colleagues, hidden allies, and the buried secrets of the empire she had just become part of. But the real test, that was still to come. Because just as she was adjusting to her new office, a confidential file was slid under her door. No sender, no name, just one sentence scribbled in red. "Not everyone wants the soul restored." Amelia stared at the file. The envelope was heavy, the kind of paper stock that demanded attention. The red ink bled slightly at the corners of the words, as if written in a hurry, or in anger. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were photographs, grainy but unmistakable. Warehouse. Boxes labeled with the Miller and Company logo. Workers moving quickly in the dark. No uniforms, no documentation. And then, an image of a man she recognized. Gerald Langford, the chief operating officer. Her breath caught. He was standing beside a delivery truck, shaking hands with a stranger in a leather jacket, both of them smiling like a deal had just been made. Behind them, pallets of unsold merchandise were being loaded, not onto Miller trucks, but into unmarked vehicles. Didn't make sense. The company didn't sell through third parties. That was policy. Strict policy. She flipped to the last page. A list of numbers. Shipment quantities. Locations. Profit margins. Entire lines of merchandise that never showed up in the official records. It was theft. Or worse, organized corruption, deep in the company's bones. Amelia locked her office door and sat back in her chair, mind racing. She had been here less than a week. Promotion out of nowhere. A file slid under her door like a trap or a gift. Was this a warning? A setup? Or maybe, just maybe, Mr. Miller had known all along, and she was part of a much larger plan. That afternoon, she approached his office with the envelope in hand, but the receptionist gave her a tight smile. "Mr. Miller's out of town today." Unreachable. Course he was. So Amelia did what she always did when she didn't know what to do. She worked. She buried herself in customer reports, internal memos, and security clearance forms. And when the office emptied out at night, she stayed. Quiet, observant, patient. On the third night, while walking past the executive break room, she saw him, Langford, laughing softly into his phone, holding a tumbler of something expensive in his hand. He didn't see her. He was too busy gloating. "I told you she'd be a good distraction," he said. "The old man thinks she's some kind of moral compass. Let him believe it. While he's off daydreaming about ethics, we'll finish the transfer by the end of the quarter. Nobody'll trace a thing." Amelia's pulse hammered in her ears. Her grip on the folder tightened. Distraction. She was a distraction. She didn't sleep that night. Her dreams were a blur of shifting faces, red ink, and the sound of freight doors closing. By morning, she had made a decision. If she was a distraction, she'd use it. If they thought she was naive, so much the better. She started asking questions, subtle at first. Reviewing inventory chains. Dropping into warehouse audits unannounced. Smiling sweetly at department heads and watching their eyes. Some flinched. Some lied. Few were scared. And one, Maria in logistics, left an anonymous envelope on Amelia's desk. It was a flash drive. Inside it, emails. Langford's private correspondences. Decrypted. Confirming everything. And implicating others. She brought it to the only person she knew she could trust. Jacob, head of 80, a quiet man with sharp eyes and a moral code like a blade. He reviewed the files, nodded once, and said, "If you're going to burn it down, you'll need more than this. You'll need names, patterns, Witnesses. They became a team. Quiet investigators in the corridors of marble and glass. 2 weeks passed. The net tightened. And then, without warning, Langford summoned her. His office was cold. The windows had been tinted, as if even the light wasn't welcome. "Miss Turner," he said, steepling his fingers. "You've been very busy." She met his eyes calm. "I like to know how things work." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You should know when to stop. You're playing in waters deeper than you think." There was silence. Then he stood, walked slowly around the desk and said, "You remind me of someone. Bright, earnest." She tried to clean things up too. Amelia didn't flinch. "What happened to her?" Langford's smile returned. "She drowned." She left the office without a word. Later that night she found her office door ajar. Her desk had been rifled through. The flash drive was gone. But Jacob had already copied everything. They were ready. Amelia looked out at the city, lights shimmering like nervous stars. The soul of the company wasn't gone. It was buried. Under greed, under silence, under fear. And she was going to dig it up. No matter the cost. The next morning, the office was quiet in that strange way it gets just before a storm. Conversations were hushed. Eyes followed Amelia a little longer than usual as she walked through the halls. People sensed something, but they didn't know what. She wore her usual calm, her uniform crisp, her posture composed. But inside she was electric. Jacob had found more. Financial trails carefully hidden behind shell vendors and phony charitable contributions. Everything tied back to Langford and 3 other executives. She slipped into the security wing under the guise of auditing customer data protocols. Jacob met her in the server room. His face was pale with tension, but his voice steady. "We have enough. Not just to bring them down," he said. "To put them away." Amelia looked at him. "Do we go to Mr. Miller?" He shook his head. "Not yet. We go public. Press, board, regulators. If we wait for Miller, Langford might get wind and spin the narrative. You only get one chance to shatter a glass tower." She nodded. By noon, an anonymous package had been delivered to the office of every board member. Encrypted drives. Hard proof. Timelines. By 2 o'clock, chaos erupted. Emergency meetings were called. Legal teams flooded in. Langford vanished from his office. Rumors flew like fire. Embezzlement, federal investigations, resignations. But Amelia wasn't in any of those meetings. She stood on the showroom floor, helping an elderly woman zip up a spring jacket, showing a young boy where the toy section had been moved, smiling politely at customers who had no idea a silent war was unfolding above their heads. At 3:17 p.m., her phone buzzed. One word from Jacob. "Now." She walked to the elevator and ascended to the executive level once more. This time Mr. Miller was waiting. He stood at the window, hands behind his back, gazing out over the city he had helped shape. When he turned to her, his eyes were unreadable. "I assume you've seen the news," he said. She nodded. "Yes." He gestured for her to sit. The air was thick with tension, but there was no anger in his voice. Only something deeper. Resignation. Or sorrow. "I knew there were cracks," he said. "But I didn't know how deep they ran." Amelia leaned forward slightly. "You trusted the wrong people." "No," he said softly. "I trusted the right people too late." There was a pause. Then he placed a small leather box on the table and opened it. Inside was a single brass key. "This," he said, "is to the archives. Basement level, past the freight lifts. There's a safe. You'll find letters, plans, old reports, everything from the beginning. Use it to rebuild. If you still want to." She stared at the key, then back at him. "What will happen to you?" she asked. He gave a tired smile. "I'll answer to the board, to the press, to myself. But this company doesn't need a figurehead anymore. It needs a future." And with that, he stood, adjusted his cuffs, and walked out of his own office, leaving her once again at the edge of something massive. She didn't go home that night. She went down to the archives, where dust lived on steel shelves and the air was heavy with history. The safe creaked open, revealing not just paperwork, but something else. Blueprints, not of buildings, but of culture. Policies, training systems, community projects, sustainability efforts, all shelved by the greed of those who wanted profit over people. She spread them out on the long table, alone in that underground cathedral of memory, and she began to build. But she wasn't alone for long. By morning, Maria from logistics arrived with coffee and a box of highlighters. Then came Jacob. Then 2 more staffers who had heard rumors and decided they wanted to be part of something real. Word spread. Not everything was easy. Lawsuits were filed. Stocks wavered. Langford was arrested boarding a private flight to Dubai. The company took a hit. But something remarkable happened. Customers began coming back. Not because of discounts or marketing, but because they heard whispers of change, of justice, of soul. And every time Amelia stood on the floor, shaking hands, giving tours, listening to suggestions, people saw it. The company didn't just have a new leader, had a new heart, but not everyone was thrilled. The next morning, she met Jacob in the basement archives. "Can you get me access to the shareholder network?" she asked. "Not just the board. The entire body." Jacob blinked. "That's nearly 700 people. And they're under NDA. "Not anymore," she said, holding up a scanned document. "This charter predates the current structure. The original bylaws state that in the event of corporate malfeasance threatening the integrity of the company, all shareholders must be notified. It's dusty, outdated, but it's still binding." Jacob grinned. "You're going to bring the shareholders into this?" She nodded. "I'm going to make sure Natalie walks into Geneva expecting to buy a company she no longer controls." The next 36 hours were a blur. Jacob worked on creating a secure live stream portal accessible only to verified shareholders. Amelia recorded a statement from Mr. Miller's old office. Clear, calm, direct. She laid out the evidence. The secret meetings, the shell companies, the buyout plan. She included the original charter and the signatures of those backing her move. She didn't ask them to panic. She asked them to vote. And as the clock ticked toward the Geneva meeting, votes poured in. At precisely 7 a.m. Geneva time, Natalie Strauss walked into a sleek, glass-walled conference room where Callum Bray and 3 investment bankers waited. She was composed, in control, every word calculated, until her phone vibrated, then vibrated again, and again. She checked the screen. Over 100 alerts. Calls from legal, from the board, from the press. The shareholder vote had passed by a landslide. Her deal was void. The assets she planned to leverage were now protected under a company-wide injunction, and her name was being linked to an internal audit that, thanks to Amelia's preparation, would be handed directly to the authorities in 2 jurisdictions. Back in the States, Amelia stood on the observation balcony overlooking the production floor. Employees had gathered, watching monitors where the live stream replayed her message. Mr. Miller approached, silent for a while. Then he said, "You just saved my father's company." Amelia turned to him. "No, our company." He smiled faintly. "You know, when you helped that old man in the store. You didn't know who he was. You weren't trying to impress anyone. That's why I picked you." "I didn't do this alone," she replied. "And we're not done. There's still rot to clean out." "Yes," he said. "But now you have the light." Later that evening, Amelia walked through the nearly empty store where it had all begun. The same flickering ceiling light. The scent of coffee from the corner kiosk. The same warm-toned tiles beneath her feet. And then, from behind a display of leather-bound notebooks, came a familiar voice. "Well," the elderly man said, stepping out slowly, cane tapping. "I see you've been busy." Her heart lifted. "Mr. Miller." The elder smiled. His eyes gleamed with something between pride and amusement. "Most people see a mess and step around it. You saw a mess and walked straight into it. Reminds me of a young fool I once knew, who built this place from nothing. I didn't know who you were that day, she said softly. And that's why I knew you were the one, he replied. Power never impresses the people who matter. He patted her arm gently. Now go build something better. And with that, he disappeared into the aisles once more, leaving Amelia with nothing but echoes, a fire in her chest, and a future waiting to be written. The store was quiet again. That deep, late-night kind of quiet that wraps around you like a secret. Amelia stood alone beneath the soft lights, the final words of the old Mr. Miller still echoing in her mind. Now go build something better. She took a deep breath and turned toward the exit, her heels clicking softly against the floor. Outside, the city pulsed with motion, but she moved slowly, deliberately, like someone crossing a threshold. But just as she reached the door, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated, thumb hovering above the screen. Voice message. He tapped play. I warned you once, a man's voice said. Low, gruff, familiar. But you didn't just pull the thread. You ripped the whole thing apart. And now others are watching. Bigger ones. Ones who don't care about votes or charters. Then silence. Her eyes narrowed. She played it again, listening for background noise. Faint hum. A deep, rhythmic whir, like the turbines of a private jet. She caught one more detail. The sound of ice clinking in a glass. A distant Bell Airport. Hotel lobby. She sent the audio to Jacob. No text, just the file. He'd know what to do. The celebration hadn't lasted even 24 hours. Now the shadows were moving again. By the next morning Jacob had results. Encrypted signal, he said. But I traced it to a satellite relay over Zurich. Someone's flying under the radar, literally. And Amelia, the voice. I cross-referenced it against an old security log from 3 years ago. He handed her a printed page. The name jumped off the top like a slap to the face. Victor Rains, former international logistics partner. Quietly severed ties with Miller and Company years ago after a failed merger. Rumors of connections to offshore laundering, backdoor supply chains, and political lobbyists. Untouchable. The kind of man who bought seats at the table instead of earning them. He's not working alone, Jacob added. Natalie didn't just plan the buyout for herself. She was a proxy. Someone else funded it. Someone who wanted the company gutted from the inside. Amelia sat down hard in her chair. So Natalie was just the tip of the iceberg. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The fight she thought she'd finished was only a doorway into something bigger, deeper, international, organized. But the thing that chilled her most wasn't Rains's reach. It was the timing. The original charter Mr. Miller's father had written. There was a line she hadn't thought much about until now. Asterisk. This company shall never be sold to those who profit from the erosion of human dignity, nor used as a vessel for oppression, corruption, or fear. Asterisk. She had thought it was poetic, idealistic. But what if it was prophetic? What if Rains had been trying to seize control for years, not just for profit, but because the charter specifically prevented his kind of business from taking root? He didn't want to own the company. He wanted to kill it. Jacob looked at her. What do we do? Amelia's answer was quiet. Certain. We stop thinking like employees. She stood and walked over to the large boardroom window, looking out across the city again. We start thinking like protectors. And so, the company entered a new phase. Not one of recovery, but of resistance. They built a small task group inside Miller and Company. Trusted people only. No titles. No departments. Just loyalty and skill. They called it the line, a reference to that one unwavering phrase in the original charter. A line that would not be crossed no matter what. They uncovered connections between Rains and several other corporations, some friendly competitors, others ghosts with beautiful branding and rotten cores. Each one had tried to acquire Miller and Company at one point or another. And each one had walked away empty-handed. Till now. Until Natalie. They had to find out how far Rains had gotten, what data he might have stolen, what relationships he'd quietly poisoned. And all the while, Amelia kept showing up every day to greet customers, walk the floor, and rebuild trust, brick by quiet brick. She hosted town halls with staff, implemented an open book accounting system, and launched an employee-led innovation program. The public loved her. The media praised her. But the wolves were circling. And one day, as she was leaving a speaking engagement, she found a small envelope tucked beneath her windshield wiper. Heavy paper. Black seal. Inside, a note written in precise, mechanical handwriting. You chose the wrong side. You still have time to walk away. She looked up, scanning the street. But whoever had left it was already gone. And that was when she knew. This was no longer just about a company. It was about a fight for the kind of world it would help shape. And she wasn't going to walk away. She kept the note in her coat pocket for weeks. Not out of fear, but as a reminder. Every time she touched it, it anchored her. A piece of darkness trying to intimidate light. It was laughable, really. Because what the people like Victor Rains never understood was that threats only worked on those with something to lose. But Amelia had already risked everything. And now she was building something that couldn't be stolen, bought, or erased. Truth, trust, legacy. Still, the threat wasn't idle. Within days, strange things began happening. The server hosting the internal employee platform went down. For 6 hours. A forged letter reached a media outlet, claiming Amelia was involved in illegal whistleblowing activity. 2 suppliers pulled out of their contracts, citing new, more attractive partners. It was all quiet, professional, surgical. No blood. Just pressure. Enough to cause doubt, to stir instability. And then Jacob disappeared for a full day. He wasn't answering texts. Not his burner, not his work phone. Amelia tried not to panic, but by midnight she was driving across the city to his apartment. The door was unlocked. Inside, his place looked untouched, except for his laptop, still open on the table. She crossed the room slowly. The screen glowed with a frozen window, a file half decrypted, labeled asterisk, Cassandra Protocol. Phase 2. Asterisk. There was a soft click behind her. She turned fast, but it was Jacob. He stood in the doorway, bruised, blood on his temple, one sleeve torn. "Lock the door," he said, his voice dry, hoarse. She rushed over, helped him to the couch. "What happened?" "I was followed after our meeting with Charlotte, the one from procurement. 2 men. Not amateurs. They didn't want to kill me. They wanted my access codes." "Did you give them anything?" He gave her a hard look. "No. But they planted something on me. My phone. Probably in the apartment too. This place is burned." She was already pulling out her own device. "I'll call." "No," he cut in. "Don't call anyone. From now on, assume we're being watched. Digitally. Physically. Even inside the company." She stared at him. "You think there's a leak? I think it's worse than that. I think Rains already has someone inside the line." The room was quiet. A long, stretched-out silence that neither of them dared to break. Finally, Jacob said, "But I decrypted part of the file before they caught up to me. Cassandra isn't just a takeover. It's a black-budget operation. Designed to collapse key ethical companies so their assets can be absorbed by Shell Corp. Miller and Company isn't the first. It's just the most visible." Amelia sat down slowly. "How many companies?" 18 that I could find. All with legacy structures. Family-owned. Values-driven. All being quietly dismantled or drowned in legal quicksand. Rains is part of a network that wants to eliminate competition by killing integrity. She stood up, fury rising in her chest like wildfire. "Then we expose the whole thing." "We can't," Jacob said. "Not yet. They'll just pivot, bury the trail deeper. We need a plan. Something public but undeniable. Something that forces regulators to act, shareholders to freeze movement, the media to swarm." Amelia looked at the frozen screen on Jacob's laptop. The Cassandra Protocol. Her mind was already moving. What if we make them think Cassandra has been compromised from the inside? That one of their own is working against them? Jacob raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting we fake a betrayal. I'm suggesting, she said slowly, that we use their own paranoia against them. Over the next few days, Amelia and Jacob built a false identity. A phantom whistleblower, code-named *Lyra. They seeded breadcrumbs in internal emails, anonymous tips to rival firms, and fake login attempts from untraceable VPN locations. Then they leaked just enough data to appear like a betrayal. Enough to make Victor Rains sweat. And it worked. Within a week, Amelia received another letter. Same black seal. But this time the message was shorter. We know it's you. She stared at it, then laughed. Actually laughed. Because now the game was no longer played in shadows. Now the enemy was looking directly at her. And that was exactly what she wanted. Because while they were watching her, they had no idea what was coming next. The rain fell hard that night, a steady drumbeat against Amelia's office window. She sat alone, the lights dimmed, watching droplets race each other down the glass. The latest letter, *We know it's you*, lay open beside her. It no longer unsettled her. Clarified things. They were reacting. That meant they were afraid. She tapped a finger slowly on her desk, then reached for her encrypted tablet and opened a blank file. If the Cassandra protocol was real, and if 18 companies had already fallen, then they weren't dealing with a business rival. This was something closer to an ideological war. And to fight an idea, she'd need more than facts. She'd need a story powerful enough to break their spell. Her fingers moved quickly as she drafted a strategy, not a press release or a legal motion, but something deeper, a digital campaign. Controlled leak. The kind that didn't just expose corruption but inspired people to resist it. She called it the Founders Project. A multimedia presentation blending internal testimonies, interviews with former employees from companies Cassandra had destroyed, and historical footage of the founding principles behind Miller & Company and others like it. A story that reminded the public why companies with ethics mattered. Why they were worth protecting. She'd frame it around legacy. Around the question, what do we lose when good companies fall quietly? The team from the line moved fast. Leah from marketing built the visual arc. Darren, their cybersecurity lead, created a secure submission form for whistleblowers from other affected companies. By the end of the week, they had over 400 submissions. Anonymous voices poured in. We were told to sign the buyout or be blacklisted from the industry. They offered us double our salaries to stay quiet and disappear. We tried to go to the press. No one would touch the story. Amelia reviewed every message, every desperate paragraph. She didn't sleep for nearly 2 days. But when the presentation was ready, it was beautiful. And devastating. She scheduled the launch for a Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. At the same time, she sent an invitation to every board member, every regulator, and every journalist who'd ever doubted her. Watch this. Then decide where you stand. She didn't send it to Victor Rains. She knew he'd already be watching. The video exploded online. Tens of thousands of shares in the first hour. Comment sections flooded with former employees of the fallen companies. Journalists began digging into the shell corporations. Regulators opened formal investigations. Then came the headline that changed everything. International task force formed to investigate corporate network behind global buyouts. The walls were closing in. Rains couldn't strike back publicly anymore. The spotlight was too bright. But Amelia knew that only made him more dangerous in the dark. And sure enough, the next blow didn't come through lawyers or shareholders. Came in the form of a single email. To every employee at Miller & Company. From an anonymous address. Subject line. The truth about Amelia Warren. Amelia's heart stopped for a fraction of a second as she opened it. Inside was a scanned document. A non-disclosure agreement from her first job, signed when she was 23, at a tech startup that had gone bankrupt. The implication. She had violated an NDA by speaking about internal company practices during one of her speeches last month. It was thin, reaching, but to the uninformed it looked serious. And it was enough to cause a tremor. Within the hour, she was called into an emergency board meeting. Some of them looked uncertain. Others looked scared. Few genuinely angry. "This isn't about the document," she told them. "This is about fear. They want you to doubt me so you'll hesitate. So you'll fracture from the inside before they have to lift a finger." One of the board members, a sharp-eyed man who'd been skeptical of her from the start, crossed his arms. "And if it's true, if you did violate an NDA," Amelia didn't flinch, "then I'll take full responsibility. But not before we acknowledge what this attack is. A distraction. If you think the survival of this company, of everything we've built together, hinges on a 10-year-old piece of paper, then maybe you're not the leaders we need right now." Silence. Then the chairwoman spoke. "I believe in what you've done, Amelia. I believe in what we're fighting for. And I say we vote." They did. The majority stood with her. As Amelia walked out of the room, a notification popped up on her tablet. A new submission to the whistleblower portal. But this one was different. It was from someone inside the Cassandra network. An anonymous message. Just one sentence. "I want out. I can give you names." She read it twice, breath catching in her throat. Because the tide was turning. And now, someone from the other side was reaching for the light. She encrypted the message, then forwarded it to Jacob and Leah with one word. Priority. Within minutes, Jacob had scrubbed metadata and bounced the packet through enough proxies to make it disappear into the ether. Leah prepared a secure response. The reply was cautious, respectful, brief. "We're listening. What do you need in return?" They waited. Hours passed. Nothing. Amelia stayed in the office through dusk, pacing in silence, the city lights flickering against the window like distant signals in Morse code. She thought about what it meant, for someone from inside that machine to speak up. What they must have risked. Then, just after midnight, the second message came. "No names. Not yet. Proof first. You'll receive a package in 36 hours. Watch carefully. And Amelia, don't trust everyone near you." The final line twisted like a wire around her ribs. She already knew the air around her was charged with betrayal, but hearing it confirmed chilled her deeper than she expected. 2 days passed slowly. Then, right on time, a plain brown parcel arrived at a P.O. box Jacob had created for exactly this kind of operation. No fingerprints, no return label. Inside was a small drive, a series of printed documents, and a burner phone with a single message on the screen. Check the video first. Amelia, Jacob, and Leah gathered in the secure basement server room. The lighting was dim, the silence oppressive. They connected the drive to a clean terminal and hit play. It was grainy footage. A boardroom, modern, windowless. The kind of room where deniable decisions are made. Victor Raines sat at the head of the table. Around him, a collection of men and women Amelia recognized only from corporate databases and financial news reports. CEOs, lawyers, venture capitalists. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago. "We underestimated her," Raines said, his voice cold, deliberate. "Amelia Warren has ignited something. We thought we'd be fighting a manager. But she's building a movement." One of the others, a tall woman with an accent Amelia couldn't place, leaned forward. "If she goes public with the Cassandra schema, we're done." "Not if we shift Cassandra to Phase 3, another man replied. "Remove her, discredit the entire project, then repackage the assets under a new vehicle. We call it collateral damage." There was a pause. Then Raines spoke again, eyes flat. "No discrediting. If she gets too close, we erase her." Amelia froze. Jacob clenched his fists. "He said erase." "I heard it," Leah whispered. "He said it like it was protocol." The video ended. There was no dramatic music. No sudden burst of anger. Just the quiet, devastating confirmation of what they had feared. This wasn't a power struggle. It was a covert war. The documents that followed painted a broader picture. Emails discussing the rerouting of pension funds, the artificial collapse of ethical brands through algorithmic targeting, even plans to bribe foreign regulators. It was, Amelia realized, not just a business empire. It was a machine designed to consume civilization's conscience. And someone from the inside had just cracked it open. But there was no time to celebrate. The burner phone buzzed. One new message. They know the package is missing. You have 48 hours before they retaliate. She looked at Jacob. We go wide. We leak it. No, he said. Not yet. If we push too soon, they'll pivot. Burn evidence. Silence people. Leah's voice was tight. Then what do we do? Amelia turned slowly to the screen. We draw them out. Make them come to us. We bait the trap. How? She stepped closer to the light. Her voice calm. I give them what they want. Jacob blinked. You mean you? Yes, she said. They think I'm the problem. That removing me resets the board. Her eyes glinted like steel in the monitor's glow. Let's make them try. The next morning, Amelia called a press conference. She stood beneath the vaulted glass dome in the Miller and Company atrium, surrounded by reporters, analysts, cameras blinking red like watchful eyes. Her hair was tied back, expression resolute. She wore no jewelry, no notes in hand, just purpose. Transparency, she began, isn't just a business strategy. It's the only weapon we have when the truth is under siege. There was a hush, the kind that comes before history shifts. In the coming days, Miller and Company will be releasing documents that detail a network of coordinated corporate acquisitions, economic sabotage, and the dismantling of ethical businesses across multiple sectors. The people behind this network have remained hidden behind shell companies, obscure subsidiaries, and false narratives. Until now. He paused. Looked directly at the cameras. They will tell you I'm lying. They will dig up my past. They will say I'm unstable, erratic, vengeful, maybe even criminal. Let them. My conscience is clear. Another pause. You could hear the pens stop moving. I will not run. I will not hide. And if they want to silence me, they'll have to do it in full view of the world. And then she walked away, leaving a storm in her wake. That evening, the reaction was explosive. #Amelia Warren trended across platforms within hours. Support poured in from grassroots organizers, entrepreneurs, economists, even celebrities who had invested in sustainable ventures and watched them collapse under mysterious conditions. But something else happened too. Amelia began noticing unusual vehicles near her apartment. Her office security system logged multiple failed access attempts. Jacob's encrypted line went dark for 2 hours. When it came back, there was a message from the whistleblower. They've activated a countermeasure. Someone inside your board. Someone close. They met that night in a secure cafe basement. Brick walls, candlelight, no cameras. Jacob was already there. A large folder laid out on the table. I ran financial audits on all 12 board members. 11 are clean, or at least clean enough. He slid one photo forward. But this one, Diane Castor, appointed 2 years ago, shortly after Rain's failed acquisition attempt. She owns a consulting firm. That firm received an anonymous $8.2 million contract last year, routed through a shell that links back to Cassandra. Amelia stared at the photo. Calm, professional, always smiling. She'd even sent Amelia flowers after her first public victory. Course she had. She's been feeding them everything, Jacob said. Meetings, strategy memos, your travel schedule. Hell, probably even this location. Amelia closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them sharp and focused. We need her to think we still trust her. Leah leaned forward. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we give her a decoy. False location. A meeting she'll want to leak. Where? Amelia smiled slightly. Zurich. Let's give them something they can't resist. They staged it perfectly. An email chain suggesting that Amelia would meet with European regulators to discuss Cassandra and provide sensitive documents. They crafted flight manifests, hotel reservations, even a supposed NDA between Miller and Company and a data firm in Bern. Then they waited. 2 days later, an alert pinged from an internal server. Diane had forwarded the Zurich memo to an external address, encrypted but traceable. "We've got her," Jacob said, his voice like flint. "Not yet," Amelia replied. "We follow her. Let her feel safe. Then, when she shows her hand, we catch the entire network watching through her. Because this was bigger than betrayal. It was proof. And if they caught Diane making direct contact, they wouldn't just have the foot soldier. They'd have the string that unraveled the entire machine." That night, Amelia received a voice message on the burner phone. It was short. A different voice now. Male, younger, unsteady. "I'm the one who sent the footage. They're getting desperate. Rains isn't the top. There's someone else. And they're coming for you, Amelia. You have 3 days before they make a move you can't walk away from." The call ended with static. Amelia stared at the phone. The network was deeper than even Rains. A greater force lurking behind him. Faceless, powerful, hidden. 3 days. She took a breath. "We set the trap," she said aloud. "And this time we don't just expose them." She looked at Jacob and Leah. "This time we break them." The next 3 days were a blur of preparation, each moment laced with tension. Amelia, Jacob, and Leah worked relentlessly, pulling every thread of the operation tighter. They traced Diane's communications, setting up secure channels to track every move, every message. It was clear now that Diane had become more than just a mole. She was a key player in the machine, and if they were going to dismantle it, they needed to pull her in without her realizing she was already caught. The plan was simple but intricate. Amelia would meet her in a neutral location, a cafe just outside the city, far from any surveillance cameras. Diane would think she was handling a small, private negotiation regarding the European deal. What Diane didn't know was that the cafe had been outfitted with enough surveillance to capture every angle, every whisper. The final piece was the deeper figure, the one behind Rains. The one who remained hidden. The whistleblower's message had mentioned it, but no one had been able to get a name. Still, Amelia had a gut feeling. There was someone pulling the strings, someone who wanted to remain anonymous, someone whose reach extended far beyond Cassandra. Amelia sat in her car that morning, staring at the cafe's entrance through the rearview mirror. It was a small, quiet place, perfect for a meeting that required discretion. She adjusted her coat, smoothing out the fabric, and took a long breath before stepping out of the car. Jacob and Leah would be monitoring from a safe distance. They had planted decoy devices around the area to ensure Diane's movements were tracked. The bell above the cafe door jingled softly as Amelia walked in. She spotted Diane immediately, sitting at a table near the window, her eyes scanning the room in a way that made it clear she was already assessing her surroundings. Amelia smiled faintly. She had underestimated her before, but not anymore. "Amelia, thank you for meeting me," Diane said, standing up as she approached. There was a warmth to her tone, but Amelia didn't let it fool her. "Of course, Diane. I'm glad we could finally connect in person," Amelia replied, taking a seat. She kept her voice steady, neutral, as if nothing had changed, as if everything was still business as usual. Diane sat down, her eyes darting briefly toward the door. Amelia could see her calculating every angle, every potential escape route. It was almost too easy. She wasn't just playing a part, she was performing. "So, what's the latest on the Zurich meeting?" Diane asked, leaning forward slightly, her fingers tapping against her coffee cup. Amelia tilted her head, keeping her expression carefully composed. "It's going well. The regulators are intrigued by our proposal, but I think we need to push harder. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I think you could play a crucial role in pushing this through." Diane's eyes gleamed with interest. "I'm glad to hear that. I've been working on a few contacts in Zurich that could help us close the deal faster." Amelia watched her closely, careful not to react. Diane was playing the game well, but Amelia could feel the tension rising. The trap was closing. It was only a matter of time before Diane made a mistake. I was thinking, Amelia continued, that perhaps we could bring in some additional leverage. Something more direct. A piece of evidence that could sway the regulators. Something they couldn't ignore. Diane's fingers stilled on the cup, but only for a moment. Then she gave a small, knowing smile. I see. You're thinking of something big. But are you sure you want to go that far? There's always the risk of exposure. Amelia leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. Exposure is part of the game, Diane. We've both been playing it for a long time. And I think it's time we take it to the next level. The words hung in the air, thick with implication. Diane didn't move, didn't speak immediately. For a second, there was only the sound of distant voices and the clink of a spoon against a cup. Then Diane shifted, looking away as if deep in thought. Maybe you're right, she said finally. But if we're doing this, we need to move fast. There's a lot at stake. Amelia's smile remained as calm as ever. Exactly. That's why I've already arranged for everything to be in place. The regulators are expecting us to make a big move. If we show them something they can't ignore, they won't be able to resist. At that moment, Amelia's phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen. It was a secure message from Jacob. She's about to make contact. Get ready. The game was on. Diane, Amelia said, her voice low but steady. I think it's time we made sure the regulators know exactly who they're dealing with. She leaned in, her tone dropping even further. And if we want to make an impact, we need to let them see everything. All the evidence. Diane froze, her eyes narrowing. What do you mean? What evidence? Amelia gave a slight, knowing smile. The files from the inside. The ones that prove Cassandra isn't just a corporate strategy. It's a crime. The realization hit Diane like a freight train, but it was already too late. Amelia's team had already swept the room for hidden devices, for any trace of surveillance on Diane's part. The moment Diane had forwarded the Zurich memo, the trap had been sprung. I didn't. Diane started to stammer, but the moment the words left her lips, she knew she was caught. Amelia stood up, her face serene. I'm sorry, Diane. It's over. As she turned to leave, she heard the faint buzz of a phone. A message slipping through the digital veil. Diane's phone, still sitting on the table, lit up with a single word. Abort. The deeper figure, the one who had been orchestrating everything from behind the scenes, had just realized they were exposed. The hunt had just begun. Amelia didn't stop. Not for a moment. She stepped out of the cafe, the cold night air biting her skin, the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. She didn't look back, but she could feel Diane's eyes burning into her, the shock still frozen on her face. That was the moment the game had truly shifted. The trap had worked. Diane had played her part perfectly, unwittingly leading them to the very heart of the operation. But there was more to do. Back at the office, Jacob and Leah were already moving fast, securing the last pieces of evidence. The leak had been contained. No one had traced it back to their team, and Diane was already under surveillance. She wouldn't be able to go to anyone. Not now. Not when they knew she was compromised. Amelia stood by the window, watching the city pulse below her, feeling the weight of the choices she had made. This wasn't just about Cassandra anymore. It wasn't about the network of corrupt businessmen, the faceless executives, or the digital empire that had thrived on lies and manipulation. It was about something bigger, the truth. The fight to protect something pure, even when the world tried to bury it beneath layers of greed and deception. Her phone buzzed again. Secure message. She opened it. You've made your move. But the game's not over. Not yet. She stared at the message, a shiver running through her. There it was again. Asterisk, the deeper figure asterisk. The one who had stayed in the shadows, the one who had orchestrated everything from the beginning. But this time there was no panic. No fear. Just clarity. They're coming for me, but I'm ready. She sent a quick reply to Jacob and Leah. Asterisk, we've got to move faster. The real fight starts now. Asterisk. Within hours they had everything they needed. Diane's contact with the anonymous source had been traced. She had been passing off critical information to someone with deep roots in global financial markets. Someone with a reach that extended far beyond Cassandra. The name came through just as the first light of dawn broke through the blinds. Victor Rains isn't the puppet master. He's just a pawn in someone else's game. The message was from the whistleblower. Meet me. I'll tell you everything. But you have to trust me. They met an hour later in a secluded corner of the city, away from prying eyes. The figure who stepped out of the shadows wasn't who Amelia expected. It was a woman, tall, poised, with eyes that carried the weight of too many secrets. "I'm Sophia," she said, her voice smooth, but with an edge that spoke of years of manipulation and power. "I've been behind everything. Cassandra, the acquisitions, the buying and selling of everything with a heartbeat. I created it all." Amelia took a breath, the realization hitting her hard. "You've been pulling the strings all along." Sophia nodded. "Victor was just my tool. But now he's a liability." The pieces clicked into place. The deeper figure was someone not just embedded in the financial world, but someone whose empire spanned industries. Someone with the ability to make or break entire economies. "And you want me to stop you," Amelia said. Sophia smiled, but it was a cold, calculated smile. "No, Amelia. I want you to join me." Amelia's heart raced, but she didn't show it. This was it. The final test. The moment she had to decide what she stood for. "Why would I ever join you?" Amelia asked. "Because you're smart," Sophia said. "You've seen the truth. The system is broken. And you can either fight it for the rest of your life, becoming the next pawn, or you can reshape it. Be part of the change. Help me take it all." Amelia thought about everything she'd been through, about the people she had helped, the betrayal she had uncovered, the fight for something greater than just wealth and power. She wasn't naive. She knew how this world worked. But she also knew there was a different path. A path that didn't lead to manipulation or corruption. "No," Amelia said, her voice firm. "You can't break what's already been broken. And I'm not playing your game." Sophia's smile faltered, just for a second before her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this." Amelia didn't hesitate. She turned on her heel and walked away. As she left the alley, the weight of everything, of every choice, every sacrifice, hung heavy on her shoulders. She didn't know what the future would hold. But for the first time she felt like she was on the right path. The city around her buzzed with life. People were waking up to a new day, oblivious to the battles fought in the shadows. But Amelia knew that as long as she was breathing, there was hope. Hope that they could rebuild from the ashes of corruption. Hope that the truth would eventually be enough to heal the wounds left by the monsters in the dark. And no matter what came next, she was ready to face it. The game was over. But the real work, that was just beginning.